Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for sticking the whole night out here. I'm going to try to do something just slightly different, give you facts that are undisputable. So, first bill, though, is a good bill. It's a pro. It's the stun gun bill. There should be a little bit of clarification in there, though. You might want to add that you don't have to have a no-shooting qualification should be required, as if you're going to carry a handgun. And you can adjudicate any kind of concerns with that on the permit that would be associated with that by putting in it always has on a permit what caliber you qualified with. You can simply put in there stun gun only. So you probably want to add that to the permit. So a stun gun is a less than lethal weapon. People that are partially handicapped or elderly might not want to use a deadly force weapon, might not be able to physically use it. At least they're afforded some opportunity at a great disadvantage that they're unfortunately dealing with to have a stun gun to defend themselves. It makes absolute sense. I couldn't see why you wouldn't pass that bill. It's very low risk, adds a lot of value to the community. Pro bill here, 5154, convicted of a violent crime, not eligible for parole. I think that's outstanding. We really need to make a message that, criminals, when they're committing a crime, a violent crime with a handgun or any kind of firearm for that matter, need to serve prison time and stay there forever. You've heard many times tonight that we're letting them out, and we need to stop finding reports on that. And that's another bill that I'll talk about in a minute here, but we need to hold them accountable, obviously. The long gun bill, a con, it's 5262. I don't support this bill, and the reason why is you've heard a few things. There are many different types of scenarios where somebody could be going to and from a friend's house, to and from a firearm range, transporting long guns to and from different areas. They could be leaving hunting areas and walking across the street, doing all lawful activities, and yet get caught up in this bill and then have to serve 10 years in prison and $10,000 fine for non-violent behavior, just simply being law-abiding citizens with a long gun. It's a very serious bill. I think you should really consider changing that. It will make law-abiding harmless citizens at very much big risk. That's 5262. 5547, possession of a firearms by a minor. This bill is now just possession. Obviously, they could go through the DEM courses and the firearm safety courses and be allowed to hunt in this state, but yet now you're in conflict here, and you're changing the 1147-33 that takes out this permit process that we intelligently put in here with the Department of Environmental Management and the comprehensive firearm safety tests to allow these youth, our next generation of responsible citizens, to use firearms in a reasonable manner and go to and from hunting areas, target ranges, and now they have to be with a parent or a guardian. So that's obviously going to limit their ability to do nice constructive things with firearms in a reasonable manner. That's 5547. That bill is not a good bill at all based on that. The similar bill, these two kind of work together. It's 5263. Again, the DEM Hunter Safety course is at 1147-34, which I think this bill is attempting to take out. It's similar to that other one. I understand the intent of this bill. I understand that in Providence and some of these city areas, some of these gang members and criminals are trying to commit crimes. They try to hand the firearm down to a youth or something. I'm sure that there's plenty of laws put in place that can prevent those type of things, and they're not going to be taking these hunter safety courses and have that documented. So you're disabling, again, the next generation, hunters and sportsmen and even camp use and target use. You've heard that tonight. That's 5263. Again, should consider not supporting that bill. Bill 5437. Actually, this bill is somewhat a good intention bill, but it's actually totally backwards. Okay, so if you read it very carefully, it says, no person shall change, alter, remove, obliviate, so forth and so on, any imitation firearm in any way that makes the imitation firearm look like a real firearm. Well, they're going to do that and commit a crime. There's two issues with that. If they're going to commit a crime, law enforcement sees somebody with a firearm that looks like a firearm, they're going to do whatever's proper to neutralize that proposed threat. Now, you have some children, some kids, some other adults that have some type of toy weapons and they camouflage it or the orange piece falls off. Now they're at liability, right? Because you just wrote this legislation in. What it should read is this, and it doesn't read this. No person shall make a operable, real, functional firearm to look like a toy, a non-operable firearm, or an imitation firearm by adding any bright orange, red, similar bright colors or coverings to the muzzle or any parts thereof to make a fake firearm look like a real firearm. So that's kind of the verbiage you should look at, so that these criminals don't take a real stolen firearm and make it look like a toy, and there's some hesitation on law enforcement's part or something because they're trying to figure this out, and now they're in a deadly situation. So that's probably the intent you envision for this bill. That's 5437. 5866, alternate markings, identification. This bill's come up several times with different variation, and one thing that's very strange is you're trying to take out a section 1147-24, and it's missing the key word, the ultimate key word about what this is all about. Manufacturer's serial number. Because manufacturer's number, manufacturer's maker number, cage code is not the firearm serial number. So you need to put serial number in there so that these guns can be traced like they're efficiently traced right now. Every gun, every receiver has a serial number, except old firearms and so forth like you heard. But this bill needs to be looked at on that line there, so you put those words back in. Serial number, not manufacturer's number. If somebody had a crafty lawyer, they could get out of that by crossing off the serial number and say, hey, it wasn't the manufacturer's number. That's in one of the sections there. Let me see, this intent of the bill... And don't forget, when you put the verbiage in there, a lot of hunters, people, they'll paint their firearms, they'll put tape on it, duct tape, camouflage it. So in some fashion, they're harmlessly not altering the gun or anything, the firearm rather, with tape and other coverings. So you got to make sure that there's a protection in there for law-abiding citizens that are simply modifying these firearms in a reasonable way, but not carving out the serial number. So you should probably take a very close look at that before you go into that. Now, you've heard a lot on the CCW bill, 6039, and very few people in here can say that they went through the process. You heard the young lady from the Attorney General that these permits are getting processed and their high success ratios, 90 and all that. But you talk to these firearm people that went for the permit, like I talked to hundreds, maybe even thousands, and the first thing they do in the letter that they get is the same letter I got. It says, either your permit was not complete or you did not show needs, and so forth and so on. And I've testified this committee many times on the process, and all you have to do is look in the Attorney General's process, and you'll see verbiage in there that says it's left at the sole discrimination of the Attorney General, and even though you meet all the showing of needs, the Attorney General can still deny you. Also, you've heard about all these different towns with different variations. This bill should actually be advertised as a safety bill to make the community safer. Like you go for a driver's license test at any one of the DMVs or anywhere, it's a standardized approach. And that's what they've conveyed here and spent a lot of time in this bill making this a standardized approach, this concealed weapon carry permit bill, with some kind of restitution for when you get harassed. I've talked to a lot of people, and you've heard it today. People go to the police station and they're intimidated. That's why we don't have a lot of concealed weapon carry permit holders in the state to defend ourselves, is because they're intimidated. You ask any of these firearm people, and they're very intimidated because of the may issue, and then now it's a shall issue. But even though it's a shall issue, you'll read many court cases where police chiefs say, and I quote, we do not issue permits, we ran out of applications, and so forth and so on. You've heard that tonight. And you've heard police testify here to that effect. So what does that say to you? The law enforcement people here that are enforcing our laws are not obeying basic laws to even give the person, such as myself, a taxpayer, a war veteran, a community citizen, a reasonable person, the chance and opportunity to have due process. That's what this bill starts addressing, and that is a good thing. And that's why we only have 0.34% of the population here in this state with these concealed weapon carry permits. And just think about it. What do you do when you're going to get a concealed carry permit? You're going above and out of your way to comply with the law and show that here I am, here's all my information, here's my comprehensive background check that you're going to do, and I want to follow the law. So that I may have to protect myself, God forbid if that happens. And also, I'm protecting myself legally because if I have a handgun or parts thereof or components, that I don't go to jail because I'm being a reasonable, responsible person and trying to obey the law. But yet we harass these people. This is a step in the right direction. This bill, 6039. And it clarifies suitable person, which the standards in there match the federal legislation for buying a firearm, which I think would be worth mentioning as well. And the timeline is very reasonable. You've heard here tonight of extensive timelines. So that's 6039. It goes in concert with this bill, 5546. This bill is the AG Open Government Honesty Bill. I thought about it. And it makes sense because the AG's office was created in 1615, and their charter was to restore public trust. But how can you do that when you don't provide a comprehensive report of all the dealings that you deal with firearm-related incidents? And every year we hear that here. We hear vague conversation, but not facts. And the Attorney General, getting paid by the taxpayer and serving this community as a leading law enforcement agent, should absolutely have to come to this committee and the House and the Senate committee and provide that data to the public. What exactly happened with any kind of firearm-related incident throughout that year? If we're building public trust like the governor says we're going to, this bill is key. This bill is key because even the Attorney General himself says, I'm here to restore public trust in the state, in this government. And that resonated with the people. It's resonated here. All the folks that are pro and con and all. Wouldn't you like to know exactly what's going on so that we can change appropriate laws to prosecute these criminals that are doing, harmful things? And also protect us that are reasonable and responsible people? Well, you don't have the data on that. It's all hearsay. We've heard a lot on this magazine capacity, and I've heard yourself ask many times, Representative, well, how many rounds is it taken? Where does these numbers come from? Well, there are several things about this. How many rounds does it take to stop a life-threatening encounter? Does anybody here know? Nobody knows. Not even the police officers, nobody knows. But there is some data on that. There are 3 cases that I brought up before, and one of them is an armed robber in Chicago engaged with police in a gun battle. It was a hellacious shootout. He was shot 33 times with a 9mm, and only until 2 12-gauge slugs hit this heroin junkie did he go down, okay? In 2005, the New York Police Department, not some hokey statistic here, the New York Police Department reported and documented 16 officers that were involved in a life-threatening encounter with a firearm, okay? The officers were under stress. You've heard this, they only hit 8% of the targets, but they use 17.3 rounds on an average. It's just a data point that it's not 10, it's not 7, it's not 5, because you're going to be home alone and you're going to be the first responder in case something crazy and goes wrong, and you're going to have to neutralize this threat. And if you end up with 1 extra bullet in your firearm, then be it so. You get to go home and see your child or your husband or your wife. But if you run out of ammo, you're a dead person. And to change a magazine, I shoot with hundreds, if not thousands of people. We've heard about how long does it take to take a magazine change. It's going to be a very long time, and somebody can engage that person. Well, the people that I've seen shoot, which are common shooters from different skill sets and levels, from beginner to novice, pretty much every single person there can change a magazine out in about 2 seconds or so. Many people can do it faster, and I know we can go around with statistics and all, but what that says is people are very efficient in changing out a magazine. And the Columbine killers brought multiple guns. These criminals are going to bring multiple firearms in. They don't care about the laws, as you heard, but you think you're going to have a 10-round magazine, you're going to prevent these killers and reduce them from killing you and all? It's not going to happen, and I have data on that too. The last case is a very interesting one. You wanted to come with a number? Here's a number, 145, okay? Police Sergeant Grammons was originally carrying 47 rounds as standard operating procedure in Wisconsin when he was on duty. Now he carries 145 every day without fail. He was involved in another shootout that lasted only 56 seconds. The assailant fired 21 rounds from 2 stolen handguns. The police officer discharged 33 rounds with misses, and only 4 rounds were remaining in his last magazine, and the assailant was hit 14 times, okay? So that was 47, and now he carries 145 every day. And that he briefed out. He detailed this whole matter in a presentation at the annual conference of SWAT personnel in Wisconsin. And some officers questioned him, well, you need 145 rounds? Aren't you paranoid? And his response was, no, I'm prepared. Now, if you're forced with multiple assailants, and it's going crazy and chaotic, it's almost the end of your life, and somebody is shooting at you, shouldn't you be afforded the same defense equipment as law enforcement does? They have great people. They put their lives at risk every single day. They carry multiple magazines. Many carry a backup firearm. They have a safety vest on, a bulletproof vest, backup, and they have it for very good reasons. I'm not saying that we need to do that every day, but you're never going to know where a criminal is going to come and attack you. You're never going to know how much ammunition you need, but I can assure you, you're going to want more than 10 rounds. The 911 response in this country, you've heard, the average, 11 minutes and 12 seconds. Violent crimes go down in just seconds of time. So when you're there and it's all going down, you're going to need a lot more than 10-round magazines. The private citizen is always the first. The victim is always the first to deal with the threat. You've also heard this, but you can look up this data yourself, factual data, not hokey statistics. But if you go to Penn State Criminology or you go to the FBI studies here, there was insufficient evidence in 1994 of a magazine capacity or the assault weapons ban, and that was due through the Clinton studies. Bill Clinton, the president, and you know very well that he was not pro-gun. So the evidence that you need is there to say banning magazines is actually going to get a lot of good, honest people killed. It's not going to save lives. And our legislation system is based on the presumption of innocence. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that when you do that, you've heard that these people can just give their magazines up. Well, that's a lot of money invested, and that's just a smaller issue of the matter, that we're just going to give up or try to arbitrarily sell all these magazines. Well, the other issue is a lot of these firearms that use these common, normal capacity magazines are dependent on those magazines with those type of appropriate rounds. Basically, Bill 5155 is not going to save lives or reduce crime or anything like that, as you heard tonight. The facts are there. So you probably should not pass that bill, obviously. The last bill you've heard is clearly a gun-free zone. And you want facts again? Just imagine two scenarios here. Imagine that these good police officers, they're just not here today, okay? And we're in an area where it's a gun-free zone school. And bang, someone comes through the door. We're all locked in here. There's only one way out. They come through that door. Now we have nothing. We have no defensive tools. Just like a fire, we have no fire extinguisher. It's just like you get in a car accident, you got no seatbelt. All of us good citizens here that could carry concealed weapons and work effectively, most of the people I know don't miss stuff like that. And you know why? Because they go to IDPA matches or similar matches. They're gun enthusiasts. They go to International Defense Pistol Association matches, and they practice a lot more sometimes than the police force do, because they're competitive, and I know a lot of concealed weapon carry permit holders that do that. And they shoot non-shoot targets, threat targets, moving targets, shoot from cover, many real-life scenarios. So if you had one of those folks here, and somebody came through, they could neutralize that threat. And then you know what happens? All you folks get to go home, thank God. You get to see your families again. But in the second scenario, it's a gun-free zone, and there's a sticker on the door. And that person comes through, now many of us are dead. You never get to go home to see your kids again. If your kids are in some school and a criminal came in like that, an evil, murderous killer, another Sandy Hook, wouldn't you love to not have it happen like you heard here, that long debate? But wouldn't you love to have somebody like myself or these other fine firearm enthusiast people, responsible armed citizens there, to give a chance to neutralize that threat immediately before any child gets hurt? And if we can just save one child, isn't it worth it to do that? Isn't it worth it to promote honest, responsible, lawful, concealed carry permit holders and push them through and change this process and make Rhode Island a safer state? Go through the proper background checks, go through the extensive training, go through the shooting qual test, and put those people throughout the public? Because even though the other gentleman that left here said, oh, there's only a few. Well, when a criminal doesn't know where those concealed weapon carry permit holders are, then it's an extensive benefit. He might not or she might not know that there's 1 in 1,000. They're not going to know where they are. But if you put a sign on the door and say, there's no guns in here, there's no concealed carry permit holders in here, there's no law enforcement police officers like these good men are here and good women, and you're not going to go through a metal detector, but you're crazy and you're sick and you're going to kill somebody. They don't care about magazine bans. They don't care about gun-free zones. They're going to go there and do the most heinous things. I also have some evidence here. And some of these are dear to my heart because they're personal. Okay, Fort Hood. I'm a war veteran, served in combat here. Fort Hood twice. The killer went in there and killed several people. You know why? It was a gun-free zone. Lafayette Grand Theater, 2 killed, gun-free zone. Virginia Tech, remember that, right? 32 killed and 17 wounded, another gun-free zone. Another good example, unfortunately, of a terrible thing was the Aurora movie theater. That crazy person drove by the same movie playing at other movie theaters, and he went to another movie theater, and he killed 12 people. And that movie theater was a gun-free zone. You can shake your head if you want, but that's true. You can look this up yourself. Sandy Hook, a gun-free zone. All the victims were helpless and unarmed, and all those school teachers, administrators, and whomever was there was all unarmed, in the most horrific thing. And if they just had 1 or 2 people there with a firearm, they would have at least had a chance. Because the police, unfortunately, were dealing with this chaotic scene, and naturally, they didn't get to, the first police officer didn't enter the building until 10 minutes after the shooting for, standard operating procedures and risk and all that. but the crimes are going to happen extremely fast, in seconds. So you're going to be the first responder, and if you're there and you're responsible, I'm citizen, and you're trained, you're going to have a chance to live, and more importantly, all those kids are going to have a chance to live. And that is definitely why you don't want to have a gun-free zone at a school or anywhere in this state. We have it here. You heard, oh, well, we have it here. Well, you have it here because you got law enforcement, state troopers walking through the buildings with multiple firearms. You got a metal detector, right? The airport, you got armed patrol, metal detectors. The courtroom, somebody said, you go through metal detectors. I think they have federal marshals there. The point is that you're never going to know when the next incident's going to happen. But you know it's going to happen because of this crazy, unfortunate world. And wouldn't you like to save those kids? Wouldn't you like to have it not happen? Yeah, but that's euphoric. It's a false narrative. Wouldn't you like to have a real concealed weapon carry permit holder who at least best can stop and neutralize that threat? And you've heard of this crossfire and all that, and the police aren't going to know where to shoot. Well, if people are shooting and all that, I'm going to want to defend those kids. And if a cop comes in, every concealed weapon carry permit knows to go just like that. That's simple. And police are not going to rush in and start shooting everybody that has a toy gun or a phone in their hand and is panicked. They're not going to start shooting people that are holding phones. That's another false narrative. Okay, you've heard a lot of false narratives today, but your mind can really think it out logically when you make these bills, because if your name's on it and this happens here and there's nobody in there, you gave nobody a chance to save all those kids' lives, okay? The fact checks, again, I can give those to you too. You heard only 8 schools and only like 10% of the people promote it. Only 10% of the people want it there. Well, that's actually absolutely not true. And you heard that nobody saves lives with handguns and so forth, and there's a whole litany and list. And I gave this presentation to you folks here, and there's a whole example of things that happen in an elementary school. A good guy neutralized a life-threatening encounter in Townsville Elementary School on September 28th. In Pennsylvania, this unfortunately very psycho kid shot and killed a teacher at a school dance, and he was neutralized by a good citizen with a firearm. And the list goes on from there. This happens every day. Responsible citizens stop and deter crimes with a firearm. Every day, thousands of times a day. There are 12 school districts in Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, California, even California with the most strict rules, that are having programs to educate, train teachers to carry firearms in school, because they realize that a criminal could be anywhere at any time, and they realize that the cost is improhibitive to have armed officers there being paid and at every door. You've heard that today. So Wisconsin, Arkansas, Mississippi, Kansas, Colorado, they've all learned it. The only way to create a good, safe learning environment, having, where the kid's not going to be traumatized, is to have good concealed weapon carry permit holders available at these schools. What we should be doing here is spending our time and money on educating and training people to use firearms effectively and safely at a very reasonable cost. They can go to these IDPA matches. They're all over the state for $20, and they're very challenging and they're very realistic. And a lot of law enforcement participates in this. It may not be the specialized training that they've had or I've had in the military and special forces, but it most certainly is pretty good, and it's very effective, and it's $20, and it's all over the state. There are solutions. The solution is we should be voting in things that put funding to firearm safety, tactical training, and training of school teachers, administrators, and the school force to use firearms effectively, carry them effectively. You've heard that the gun's going to fall out and create harm. Every firearm gets a drop test. Every firearm gets a environmental qualification safety test. There's many intrinsic safeties to firearms, okay? They go through extensive safety before they can get out into production or even low-rate production. So firearms are very safe. People who go through training that are responsible armed citizens carry their firearms in good concealed holsters. They don't play with it while they're sitting in the bathroom like that lady did and shot a round through the toilet that went into her leg. They're not the one in Utah that was playing with it in his pocket and playing with it acting cool. Those are very rare things, and that's what you heard tonight, and that's what happened. If you look, there are millions and millions and millions of responsible armed citizens. And if you look at statistics, the real statistics from like the Department of Justice and not some other hokey statistic, you'll see that the firearm-related accidents are extremely low, like in the hundreds, with many millions of people carrying each year. So be careful of your statistics. If you want real factual statistics, I brought them up here for you just because you heard, well, nobody wants to approve guns in school. There was a poll from MSNBC, which is very anti-gun, that showed 48% would go for guns in school. But it doesn't matter statistics. You keep playing with that. I got a whole list of them because somebody had asked for those statistics of how many polls are there and do people think that firearms should be in school. Well, it doesn't matter. Based on this conversation, it's intuitive. You can't go with the false narrative that you never know where an incident's going to happen. If you had somebody responsible like us and a good trained, responsible firearm owner, they could have the chance to stop that threat. Now, I've worked hard on these presentations. I flew through them, and I'm an engineer. I have a lot of statistics and standards that are very standalone. They're not hokey. They're not from some kind of organization, from the Department of
Rod, have you given that to the clerk? Your package? Do we have it here with us?
I gave my presentation, and there's an example of some other statistics, but I did give these presentations to the clerk.
Good.
I gave some moderate statistics, but I have solid statistics that are standalone. So if you wanted objective qualitative evidence, you have it. But it's standalone in this conversation I just afforded you. So if you have any other questions and you want to, it's late, everyone's tired, everyone's got their opinions, but we take out the emotion and you look at these facts and you think about safety and the efficiencies of firearm ownership in this state, you know.
Any questions for Rod? Representative Ella Wilkinson.
You said something about a firearm safety training that occurs periodically throughout the state. It's a
I brought some magazines here, and it's called International Defense Pistol Association. It's a very popular association. It happens at many clubs throughout Rhode Island here. And there are many other organizations and matches like that, like USPSA and other matches that create real-life scenarios of shoot, no shoot, shooting from cover, shooting from moving targets, tactical reloading, and so forth. Very lifelike simulated, concealed carry permit holder type situations, God forbid, if one has to get into one, that's free and effective. Not free, but $20. You show up there, and these folks here that are NRA instructors, range safety officers will spend time with you. I've never been to any one of these ranges where they didn't want to spend time with you. What I'm saying is we could start the School Shield program here and give appropriate funding to something that's truly, actually, really going to make a difference instead of just, you know, a lot of talk and nothing. School Shield program with the NRA, we should do that. That trains the teachers. It goes beyond Alice training. Stand there, yell, and hide in the corner and wait for the active shooter to go away. Okay? That's simply not going to work in today's day and age.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Any other questions?